But actually the sample questions means based on these sample questions, we would both revisit the topics that we have discussed, and then we have to discuss them at length, as I announced on the first day, and then also some new topics today. So I think everyone got the screen shared, right, on your side?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So so that I can that's the way I can help you, because some of you personally spoke with me and told that you felt pressurized. Actually, I didn't want that to happen, and then so that this course has to go very smoothly, and also when you face exams, and then so that I'm sharing some sample questions on which our discussion would be carried out today. And then, so at the same time, I hope that everyone has studied Venerable Dr. Rahula's book, What the Buddha Taught, the textbook, I guess. Has everyone read that, or maybe in the middle of reading the whole book? So that being said, before I start, I would like to know if you have any questions so far about the syllabus or the exams that we're going to do, because today's session is a free session, and we're going to cover some topics. At the same time, we're going to revisit the topics that we have already covered, because fundamental teachings of Buddhism are not many, and even though there are different areas, we purposely have to leave them undiscussed, because I never want to get you confused, and also never want to give you too much information. So that any questions? No, right? So so let's just to go through this discussion on sample questions first. Once again, this is not a discussion of questions actually. Based on these sample questions, we do the class today. Let's see. See, the first one is, first question is, when this is, that is, this arising, that arises. Write an adequate introduction to the fundamental teachings this statement corresponds to. Now, this sample question corresponds to the topic on which one? Which topic? Interdependent origination, paticca samuppada, that we discussed. And then second sample question corresponds to nirvana, that we covered. Nirvana. Third one is rebirth. So that another area, another fundamental teaching of Buddhism. And number fourth, also it covers the fundamental teaching of karma and also samsara, number four. Number five is about the five aggregates that we discussed last week. And number six is give a brief introduction, 3 marks of existence. That is, so the Tilakkana that we discussed. And number 7, it says, write an adequate introduction to second noble truth. And that covers, that's about the 4 noble truths. And then, why I included, why I am saying he is the second noble truth is that it is the second noble truth of which you have to remember more information, because it second so it is also interconnected with other fundamental teachings. Now, let's revisit, because I'm helping you at this point. That's why I thought I should have the whole class time dedicated to discussing, revisiting the topics that we have covered, and also at the same time we will add more data, more information, and at the same time, in case you have done other extra readings online, like peer-reviewed, authentic academic articles or essays, and you are welcome to share them as well. And then from today onwards, you will start reading the textbook. At the same time, start writing, answering these sample questions. And these sample questions will take you to nirvana, I would like to say. These sample questions will take you to nirvana. I think everyone got that. And then, so the first one, so I'm not sharing any textbooks or any pages from Rahula's book today, because the technique, as I said, is just to get to pay your full attention to these sample questions, and then you can start answering those questions. So start formulating answers for those questions. So by the time you face mock exams and the actual final exams, you will feel no pressure at all. You will have like, it would be like you already knew the answer, you already knew the question by the time you sit for the mock exam and the final exams. So now, the first topic, and also I have arranged this sample question not in the order that we discussed all the fundamental teachings, so that that's okay. And then and put yourself in exam mode today as you continue. So that let's look at the first question. When this is, that is, this arising, that arises. Now everyone remembers this formula. This formula corresponds to the Buddha's teaching of causality, or so the idea of relativity. Remember, so that in overall in Buddhist psychology and Buddhist philosophy, whenever you define the nature of any reality, it could be your thoughts, your feelings, it could be your physical body, it could be any objects, or it could be sense and sense objects. That was, that's what we discussed. So that our world or our experience is based on our perception. It's called perception-based experience. To us, the world, as Buddha says, world is what we see, what we capture with our sense faculties. So our world is necessarily sense-based, or the sensory world, and we remain connected with the outside world, and so that, but outside world is same outside world appears to different people in different ways. That's because people see the world based on the way they want to see the world. Now, that is called perception. And you'd also remember that the deer analogy that we discussed. In a forest landscape that is hit by a drought or a famine, wildlife is starving because and then this bunch of deer, now they are standing in the hot sun, and then they see the water at a distance, and that's what Buddha call. That's mirage. But the deer fail to understand that it is the mirage. It's simply the reflection of the heat from the earth. The heat of the sun getting reflected from the earth back. So that's one. But the deer are they are convinced that it is the water, so that they keep running after, running towards the distance, to the direction where they see the water. And by the time they reach the place, and then the water is further away, and then they see it is at a distance, and so they keep running again. And then what happens? Until they get exhausted, or their continuous running may cause their death as well. Now that is the perception is, so that we see the same natural world, physical world, differently at different times. We see the same natural world, the physical world, differently at different times. That's a statement. Just like it happened, so that's why we fail to come to a conclusion, a universal conclusion of the things that we experience with our sense faculties. And then, so that is when, and then we always attribute a certain degree of value to the things that we experience through our sense faculties. And then it's always, our perception is based on our needs. And so that the world is what we see, what we capture within our perception. And the perception is based on our needs. And again, the conclusion is, the world that we see is based on how far we need it or how far we don't need it, how far we want it, how far we don't want it to see, to experience. Now, the solution that Buddha has suggested is that we also we try our best to see, so that the reality is not as they appeared to our naked eyes, but in terms of what has created those realities. At that point we refer to, because at that point, you know, that we have discussed two levels of realities: conventional reality and the absolute or the ultimate reality. Conventional realities have a certain degree of value or essence built in, but at the same time, what the kind of value that we see is not the built-in value of realities, or the natural value, or the natural essence of those realities, but the attributed value, or the attributed essence. Based on the attributed essence or value, we think about, and then we grasp, we make some conclusions of the reality that we experience in our life. But which it could be a conventional reality, it could be an absolute reality. Everything is relative. Even nirvana is not a reflection of samsara. And then when you reduce samsara to zero, and then so that you have zero attachment to samsara, so that you don't see samsara again. But at that point, you are already at nirvana. And that is something that we find it difficult to grasp. I myself can't, in a practical sense, I cannot grasp that, because I haven't been to nirvana yet. But I can understand realities before nirvana, but not nirvana itself. And then even of the realities or conditions or realities with before nirvana, I cannot have a perfect conclusion. I can simply have a need-based conclusion, meaning based on my needs. Based on my urges, I make some conclusions. But enlightened people, they don't look at that. And like Buddha wants us to look at reality based on in terms of the interdependent nature. Interdependent, or nothing is independent. Everything is interdependent. What is interdependent means any reality is not uniformed. So it is based on so that the causes and condition. So that any reality is relative by itself. So without certain causes and conditions, there's no way that certain things come into being. And of course, there's a reason behind. There's a cause of a multitude of causes behind. There's a single reason or a multitude of reasons behind the creation or the coming into being of any reality. And that's what we understand based on this formula. When this is, that is. This arising, that arises. The key word that you're going to remember when you define, when you understand the fundamental teaching of interdependent origination or paticca samuppada is so that the teaching causality, these two words, causality and relativity. Probably relativity makes more sense. Causality and relativity. And also remember we talked about relativity a lot. When the relative conditions are gone, a reality is not a reality anymore. So that is called, and then and you remember the Pali, the corresponding Pali phrase, so that when this is imasming sati idang hoti, when this is idang hoti, that is. So that imas and at the same time so that the opposite side of it is imas being asati, when this is not idang nahoti, that is not. And then the second line of the formula describe the first formula further. Imas uppada, this arisen, idang uppajjati, that arises. And the opposite part of the negative side of the statement is so that imas nirodha, when this is ceased, idang nirujjati, that ceases too. Now that is the whole phrase, but you have to remember the entire phrase in English. So that it must mean, so that when this is, that is. When this is not, that is not. This arising, that arises. When this is ceased, that ceases too. Now that is the universal formula that we use to define, to describe, elaborate on any reality. It could be our feelings, it could be our our how to say, our physical body, our mind, our experience, physical objects, senses and sense objects, anything. So that's any questions about this interdependent origination? No, I guess. Right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah. So then, think about this this sample question, interdependent origination. Please read the relevant part of the book, and also you are welcome to add more reference if you want, because so that's why, given the coronavirus pandemic and all that, I also spoke with some faculty members at the University of Kalani, and it looks like all over the world people are some depressed, and also some people, they cut short of the teaching, I mean syllabus and all, syllabi and all that. I know some universities in the US, they are graduating early. the universities are offering them an early graduation, because what matters when it comes to this class is not actually the syllabus, but actually cover all the fundamental teachings so that without going into much detail, and then get yourself in exam mode mindset, and so that you can start formulating the answers to these questions. And that would be an effective collection of data for your future exams. At the same time, because when you motivate yourself to answer these sample questions, and then automatically you can tend to do the assigned readings, and then revisit your class notes with lots of enthusiasm. Right? So that is the first one. And then, excuse me, the second one is nirvana. Again, remember the tricky part of that. This is a discussion on sample questions, right? The sample is, I know, because most of sample means it's a sample, but you don't have to think about outside of these questions when it comes to exams. Please pay all full attention onto these questions and answer these questions as though you are now answering the actual questions in the final exams. And please start doing that tonight itself. And then second one, define nirvana in Buddhism in comparison to Hindu and Jain teachings. And oftentimes you come across the definition of nirvana like this: Hinduism and Buddhism. And we discussed the nirvana in terms of three Indian religions: Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. And Buddhism and Jainism are humanistic religions. They don't accept, they don't believe in a creator God. And then whereas Hinduism does. Hinduism, being a theistic religion, believes in a creator, that is Brahman, as you know. But again, all these three religions, and of course other Indian religions, there are many religions in India, but these are the mainstream, these are the Indian world religions. But they use the term nirvana and samsara apparently interchangeably. But to someone who just capture the term, look at the term nirvana on the surface level, it looks same when it comes to, and they would tend to decide or assume that nirvana is same in all the three religions: Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. Historically, Hinduism appeared first, and then so that Hinduism predates Jainism, and Buddhism predates Jainism. So that, but nirvana again, and remember the definition here is the, I think, nir plus vana. I think you remember that. Nir plus vana is nirvana, right? So nir means nil, zero, and vana is cravings. So where there is no craving, there is nirvana. And also I would like to get your attention to two terms that we discussed in class the last time during our session, the relevant session: the cosmic process and the cognitive or the inner process. So always nirvana in Hinduism is a cognitive process. You came from Brahman, and that is where you are going one day. And then there's an intermediate existence that we all have according to Hinduism. So you originated from Brahman. That's your birth. That's your genesis. Remember that word that is the term that Venerable Rahula uses in his teaching. That's the term that he uses to call the interdependent origination. That is conditioned genesis. So the nature of how to say this fundamental teachings of Buddhism is all these teachings, fundamental teachings are not independent. They are always overlapping and they are always interconnected. And so that is why whichever fundamental teaching that we discuss, and it is, and then automatically we have to, so that we have to pay attention to other fundamental teachings as well. So that the idea, the entire teachings of the Buddha is based on one single word, that is dukkha, suffering or sense of unfulfillment. And in his effort to describe dukkha, unfulfillment, and so that he has explained dukkha in different terms, from different angles. And what we call different fundamental teachings of Buddhism is nothing but those individual, those different angles that Buddha has used to describe the same reality of dukkha. There is dukkha, and there should be, and it is continuous, and you come back to dukkha, and unless you make a conscious effort to walk out of dukkha, if you need, the only way out of dukkha is nirvana. So that is why all these fundamental teachings of Buddhism are intertwined, interconnected, and overlapping. You come up with the same technical terms when you describe. So that's for example. See, we are now talking about nirvana here, but at the same time, we happen to touch on the fundamental teaching of conditioned genesis, because you can't explain nirvana without reading or without referring to the fundamental teaching of conditioned genesis or the interdependent origination. Well, the nirvana, we originated from, we have a genesis. We came from Brahman. And then so that is unquestionable according to any theistic religion. You can question the genesis, or you may, but there's no way to. The only extent that you go explaining the genesis is, well, Brahman or God created you, and then so that God, gave you life. You were sent down to the earthly level. Now you are a full being, and then you live, you experience, and then you go through how this intermediate state. I think I did not mention that the last time. Think about this. This is how to see our creation and samsara. Now, Genesis, I mean your creation, and then you have, and then before you go back to Brahman, called the Brahma Sahaveta, or the union with Brahman, or maybe your salvation. So between your genesis and your salvation, there is an intermediate state that is called samsara. According if you use Eastern religious terms, intermediate. So that whereas when it comes to Buddhism, Genesis is not as simple and uniformed as it is believed and taught in theistic religions like Hinduism. Rather, it is it's also relative. Our genesis is relative as opposed to, because that's where, think about nirvana in relation to conditioned genesis. Whenever you explain nirvana as it is taught in Buddhism, explain nirvana in relation to conditioned genesis. And then when you explain nirvana according to Hinduism, explain it in relation to cosmic genesis. So, and then you came from the divine, whereas your genesis, your birth, your creation, your origin occurred so that based on your own inner conditions and the outside world. So the nirvana is a cosmic process according to Hinduism. So it is an inner process, it's a cognitive process according to Buddhism. But at the same time, there are some differences of opinion when it comes to compare nirvana in Buddhism and nirvana in Jainism. But both religions being humanistic or never believe in a higher cosmic power, and they both understand nirvana. Both religions teach nirvana as a cognitive process, something internal, something inner. But again, the difference between, at this time we have to look at nirvana in how to say Jainism in terms of how to so that fatalism, right? You can change your karma, and then so karma is beyond your control according to Jainism. So that the only way you can do according to, in case you, if you want to achieve nirvana within, according to Jainism, what you have to do is you have to extirpate, you have to, what is called, you have to melt all your past karma. In order to do that, you must live an extreme ascetic life, just like Jain priests do. So that by you have to melt your karma by living an extreme form of ascetic life. And so that so at the same time, while you melt away all the past karma, and at the same time you are responsible for making no new karma. So that is why you have minimal social contacts in Jainism. That's because of the idea of nirvana is based on the idea that karma is beyond your control. So that's the slight difference. That's the fine line between nirvana in Hinduism, Jainism and Buddhism. And then when you, just like you explain nirvana in Hinduism, you do that in relation to, with reference to Brahman, just like you explain nirvana in Jainism, so that with reference to their teaching, its teaching of karma being beyond touch, beyond control. You define nirvana in Buddhism based on the teaching of karma, which is way different than that in Hinduism and Jainism. Why? We can make certain adjustments to our karma. Karma is not everything. According to Hinduism, Jainism is everything is karmic. So that's why it's fatalistic. In Buddhism, it's not. Everything is not fatalistic. Everything is not karmic. While a big event, big life situation could be karmic, could be a karmic outcome. A small happening in life could be a karmic effect. A big situation in your life may be non-karmic. So based on the size or the gravity of action, you can decide whether it's karmic or non-karmic. But one thing is here is that we are responsible for our own existence, for our own action. So that being karma has no cosmic connection whatsoever in Buddhism, unlike in Hinduism. And then karma has no connection whatsoever with fatalism, just like in Hinduism, Jainism. And then, but once created, karma would remain a permanent property of our consciousness, though. But we are still able to plant new karma, and so you can make some adjustments. You can push the karma to the sides so that we would be able to let newly created karma, newly planted karma start. We can help the newly planted karma to start resulting, so that we should be able to do that. So that's how we, and then nirvana is not, it's a personal conscious effort. It's not an automatic, it's not part of an automatic cosmic process like in Hinduism. And then at the same time, you don't have to torture yourself, unlike just like you do in Jainism, for the sake of nirvana, because you don't believe in fate in Buddhism, just like in Hinduism. So that you never surrender to your fate, but you simply are determined to make some adjustments and changes to the karma that you have already done. And unfortunately, we don't remember how much karma we have done. At the same time, that's one thing. So when you define nirvana in Buddhism, you have to do that in terms of in light of the terms, so that karma, and also then again samsara here. Now samsara, as we mentioned a moment ago, that samsara according to Hinduism is the intermediate state between our creation and our salvation. And then so it is a definite, so that our, according to Hinduism, our creation happened in a moment, and one day our salvation would happen in a moment too, within the moment. But the intermediate state of samsara is indefinite. You don't know how long you're going to wander the samsara, how long you're going to travel the samsara. And that's according to Hinduism. According to Jainism too, you don't know, your samsara is indefinite. You don't know how long it will take. And according to Buddhism too, you don't know how long it's going to, how long you're going to stay in the samsara, At that point, just like the term nirvana, the term samsara also looks the same on the surface level. Apparently, when you take the first look at the term, suppose you are looking at the term samsara for the first time, and then you would say, and at the same time, having listened to the fact, having known the fact that samsara is mentioned in Hinduism, it is mentioned in Jainism, and it is mentioned in Buddhism, well, it looks the same term, but doctrinally, philosophically, it's very different from each other. So then in Buddhism also, samsara is an indefinite period of time within which you come back to life, and then you die also an indefinite number of times, unless you make a conscious effort to stop the samsara, your own personal samsara, so that you can achieve what is called nirvana in Buddhism. And also you look at nirvana in Buddhism in terms of your karma and also your moral responsibility. There's no one to save you. There's no one to come to you and save you from suffering, dukkha. You have to save yourself. So at that point, even though according to Hinduism, nirvana is a cosmic landscape, because it is the same nirvana, same salvation that you get. Where is that? That is within Brahman. When you go back, it is a universal landscape of nirvana or salvation. Whereas, because in Buddhism too, some people believe that there's a single place, like a cosmic place where everyone goes. That's why in latter-day Buddhist teachings and latter-day Buddhist masters, teachers, gurus, scholars, based on their tradition and somehow stressed out that there's a place called nirvana and everyone is go based on different religious traditions. But according to early Buddhism, Pali Buddhism, nirvana, there's no single universal commonplace landscape called nirvana. You achieve your own nirvana. Why? Because if you are 15 people, 18 people, including we are 18 people, let's suppose, and then we have to embark upon our nirvana individually. So nirvana, I have to achieve my own nirvana. As I may have different timing, and then so that you have your own timing. Why? Again, because nirvana in Buddhism is an internal cognitive process, and you practice the path nirvana, and so that is depending on your own nirvana. And then even though, like conventionally people say, one day we will go to nirvana together. Romantically, I mean, you just say that. We also say it is always motivating, it's always romantic, it's always fascinating to say that let's go to nirvana together. But you can say that conventionally, but philosophically, Buddhist psychologically, it doesn't happen. It's a different story that two individuals, for example, you and your partner, are determined to travel the samsara together, and so that at the same time, and your expectation is that you achieve nirvana at the same time. But same time means there's no common nirvana that both go. Let's say the story here is, what is different here is, let's say you and your partner, your friend sit together and then you meditate or you attain nirvana at the same moment. But it is not, well, by character, it is the same nirvana because there is zero attachment, zero acquisition, you acquire nothing. But so that you can enjoy your own nirvana because you have an individual mind, you have your own mind. Your mind is private, your mind is personal. So should be your salvation, nirvana. So that while two people are able to, let's say, as a group, we work on our nirvana as a group. It could be a group activity, group task. But some of us may achieve nirvana sooner, but it will take some of us like many different lifetimes to achieve our nirvana. So that's how we define nirvana in Hinduism and Buddhism. Any questions? No? Right, okay.
Bhante, I have a question. Me?
Yes, Tosita, yeah.
I'm sorry. Sorry about the question. It's
That's
just
okay.
I'm a little confused about. I
Actually,
don't know.
I need to know. Actually, today, as we continue with this discussion and revisiting the teachings, you are free to ask me a question anytime. You don't have to type it on the notepad. Yes, Tosita, yes, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I do hear. Yes, please.
So I believe in your description a few minutes ago, you mentioned in Buddhism, we don't consider major events as karmic. I think you started like that and then corrected yourself. My question is something like this. So we've acknowledged in previous lessons that certain, at least even within Buddhist history, for example, Venerable Mugalan's situation, where he could not escape his eventual
karma. Yeah.
death. Yes. So there was some connection to karma.
Yes. Yeah,
but,
that's true.
But today, in today's discussion, just a few minutes ago, we were discussing in Buddhism, we don't relate things to karma. It's a cognitive process. So there seems to be a fine fine line between karma's relationship to nirvana and how that's interpreted? I just wanted
right.
to get that
Mhm.
clarified. Is my
Actually,
question clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay.
Question is very, thank you. Actually, that is a fascinating question that has been asked throughout the Buddhist history. Because, for example, now Venerable Moggallana, who was one of the Buddha's two disciples, everyone knows the story that a gang of robbers broke into his monastery, and then they attack him, so that he was almost like crushed to death. And then through his psychic powers, and then he would manage to go to Buddha, and then ask the Buddha for permission to go to pass away. And then, so that is one thing. So that because of this, thank you for asking that question, Tosit. Actually, I myself was confused as to why Venerable Moggallana had to face his past karma. Of course, you come across that in the Apadana Pali, and then also Buddha also had the same thing. Buddha would at times not be able to continue his teaching for a few hours in a row, and then he would get a severe headache and also back pain. Now, this is the point here. Thank you very much for asking that question again. Now, our physical body, right? Our physical body is still subject to our past karma. Why? Because at enlightenment, what you do is that you enlighten your mind, not your physical body. So the physical body has a karmic connection, so that physical body is partially created by karma. Remember three things that contributed towards our embryo: our karma, then our parental genes, that is genetic, and then genes from the parents, and then the karma. Because when the consciousness pushes itself into the physical part of the embryo in the mother's womb, when the embryo has just been created, and it is our consciousness arriving from a dead person that contributes towards the creation of the mental part of our embryo. So that even though Buddha is fully enlightened, even though Venerable Moggallana was fully enlightened, and then his body was still subject to past karma. So there's no way to accept it. So that is why now I think here we have the, which one we use? Okay, give me 1 second. Where is the notepad again? Okay, chat. Again, this what this. Well, let me type them. So the says so Padisesa Nibbana and Anupadisesa Nibbana. And first one is Sa Upadi. Second one is Na Upadi. Now, centuries later, Buddhist scholars, there was this argument or debate among different Buddhist schools of thought as to why Buddha had a severe headache and back pain, even though he was the enlightened one. Why Venerable Moggallana was almost crushed to death by a gang of robbers, robbers that broke into his monastery. And so that's why, in order to avoid the confusion and describe the nirvana, so that later in the commentaries you you come across two types of nirvana, which is again confusing. Two types of nirvana. Two types of nirvana means your nirvana still within your physical body that you acquired at birth. You are an enlightened person. And then what happens? Upon your death, when you leave your life, there's no more connection with your physical body. And that's called na upadhi. Upadhi means body. Upadhi. Upadhi is body. So nirvana with physical body, nirvana without physical body. That's the literal translation of the two terms. But what happens throughout the Buddhist history, this definition of nirvana created more confusion among different schools of Buddhism. While some thought then, okay, then there should be two different types of nirvana. But even today in this Vesak season, remember, and you say that, how you say that is, well, Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and nirvana. But actually, philosophically, now, well, Siddhartha was a lay person. Philosophically, Siddhartha achieved enlightenment at age 35. And it is at the same time that he got enlightened that he achieved his nirvana. Why then in different Buddhist traditions, people believe that Buddha passed into nirvana? But actually then that would pave the way for our own conclusion that there should be two types of nirvana in Buddhism. But that's the philosophical question. Which that philosophical question arises from what you explained now, Tosita, that Venerable Moggallana, despite his being an enlightened one, and so that he was almost crushed to death by those robbers, a gang of robbers, and so that he would, through his psychic powers, he would manage to go to Buddha and ask his permission to pass away. And so in order to correctly say, philosophically, like, okay, Siddhartha was born, he achieved nirvana at age 35, and then his physical body, and then he died his conventional literal death in order not to return to samsara. Now that should be the correct, near correct, almost correct philosophical description of his nirvana. But because of that, because of the fact that our physical body, even after enlightenment, our body is still subject to our past karma. And then this philosophical question arose in the Buddhist history. So did I explain that, or you need more clarification?
So sorry to hijack again.
That's okay. No, please. Actually, I like that. I think everyone would love that. I love that personally. Mm-hmm.
So you bring up a good point. That's something that I guess I never realized, that karma is, so physical body is subjected to karma even if you are enlightened. That's something that I didn't really realize until you just pointed that out. Now the next question that comes to my mind is, we get into a physical body because we carry forward some essence of karma, continuation, right? So mentally we are trying to break that. So we are trying to break the cycle mentally, so we don't get into a physical body.
Right.
But then again, to get into a physical body, we carry something with our mental body, I suppose, beyond this life. So can you clarify on that, please?
Yeah, that's right. As long as you don't achieve nirvana, and then you will continue to carry the karma within. I mean, it is your consciousness that gets reborn into a different life form. So that That's what that's how the statement starts in Buddhism. Definition start in Buddhism. As long as you are not enlightened, you will carry that karma forward. You will carry that out into another life form. So that let's say you achieve nirvana within this lifetime, and what happens is you get all your karma because there's no attachment, because you have zero desire, zero expectation to come back to samsaric existence, and you never want a life form again. So that what happens is then you totally, and then that's when I see the fine line that you explain. Now remember in the Ratana Sutta and say that Kinang Puranang, all karmas are totally destroyed, Navannati Sambhavan, no new karmas are created. At that point, how you destroy the past karma is not the fact that you are not subject to karma. You are subject to your past karma, but what you do something else. It is not karma that you terminate. What you totally terminate is your desire to come back. When you have no desire to come back, and so that karma is left out without being able to give you a rebirth. If you use a different analogy, like say you like so that the first time you met your partner, who would later become your spouse or may not, anyway, so that during the first few weeks, months, when you are dating someone, and then you feel like, and you like the person so much, you love the person so much that you would pay a visit to that person anytime possible, even at night. Whereas, and then again you get disinterested, and either because you break up, but that part is not relevant to the description of nirvana here. Let's say for a reason, you stop being interested, you stop loving that person, and you never want to see that person again, never to revisit, and instead you will completely disregard that person, and you will try to delete the person from your mind, and will completely disregard that person because you are totally disinterested in that person. Likewise, so that it is not karma that you stop karma from resulting means that you stop, you totally destroy, you totally get rid of attachment for a future existence. You totally stop being desirous of coming back to life out of despair, out of a sense of disappointment that you are not happy with the way you have lived your life, and you don't know that whether you're happy in your past life, and then of course you need to come back and relive your life. You need to fix everything, and you need to live your life again right from the beginning, and that is called bhava tanha, as you know, that trishna, desire for existence. Yeah, it is not karma that you fundamentally destroy, it is your desire to come back that you destroy. So as a result, karma stands no chance to take you to a new rebirth.
Bante,
Yes.
this is Huang.
Yeah. Sorry. Did I? What about Tosita? Did I answer that?
I think I have a better understanding, Bante. I have more
Mhm.
questions, but I think I have a better understanding. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You can call me on personal time on my personal phone number. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
But
yes, sir.
Bante,
Mhm.
on the time of taking effects of
Mhm.
karma, there are 4 of them. The last one is defunct karma.
Yeah, defunct
So,
karma. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, defunct karma, is it happen or is it in effect when a person gain some source of enlightenment, like for example, Moggallana, he
Mm.
still may have some other karma
Yeah.
lingering.
Mm.
Or Buddha may have some karma lingering, like his headache and so on, so on. However, since he both retain arahantship, then when they passed, they left the samsara, the
Yeah.
bodily samsara, all of the karma that it's still lingering there will become a what in definition is defunct karma. So that karma is no longer bear fruit.
Exactly. Actually, that answer to that question adds to the answer to the question that Thosit asked. Yes. Now, what becomes is called ahosi kamma. I just type that in, and you see that ahosi called the defunct. How to say? Defunct karma. Karma become defunct not at the moment you get enlightened. If it does, then Buddha shouldn't have, he shouldn't have that severe back pain and headache. And Venerable Moggallana shouldn't have faced that accident, that life-threatening thing by a gang of robbers. Karma becomes defunct when the death of the enlightened person occurs. Because then again, because the enlightened person who has now literally died, who is literally dead, is not coming back to life, for the simple reason that he is not coming back to life, coming back to samsara, because he so that the karma becomes defunct, not because he is enlightened. So, and then karma would, as you say, karma would still be lingering. And then so that but one difference is here, unlike in the case of an unenlightened person, because remember the point that we discussed. Now, when you are emotionally fragile, even the small karma could have a big effect on your life. Whereas when you are emotionally stronger, much stronger, even a big karma would have much less effect on your life. Now that happens in the case of unenlightened people. Whereas when it comes to enlightened ones, and so that there's no, so enlightened ones can reduce the gravity of karma. Of course, they are not interested in the result of good karma as well. And they can reduce the gravity of bad karma. But again, so that in case it is part of the janaka or the reproductive karma, generative karma that we discussed, and you have to face it, so that the karma only becomes completely defunct when the enlightened person, when the death of the enlightened person occurs, when he is dead, because there's no connection, there's no being created again. So, did I answer that? Mm-hmm. So that, yeah, see the Kyle's reflection here. To exist as a being, it to be surrounded and infused with karma. Karma is infinite. You never are rid of all your karma. It is not that the Buddha didn't experience karma upon enlightenment. An enlightened mind simply burns up karma as it happens on the being every moment. Karma will always happen, to exist, to think, to be indeed karma. It's always there. But if you are enlightened, it simply doesn't affect you in the same way like anymore. That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm. So karma becomes defunct upon the death of the enlightened person. It's not so that because there's no physical body, that is the last piece of karmic production, right? Because karma has a big role in creating our physical body. Now that the physical body, the enlightened person is dead, and so that he got his For example, in the Buddha's case, he got enlightened at age 35, and then he lived another 45 years within the same physical body that he had as an unenlightened person called Siddhartha. At the same time, but again, as long as he lived physically, his physical body was subject to some of his past karma. But again, when he passed away, when he died, and then the remaining karma wouldn't have a chance to come back to him, because there's no existence, there's no coming back of him, there's no coming back to samsara. So,
hi Bhante, this is Josh.
okay, Josh.
Without getting too without a huge explanation, I was just curious how the six sense spheres factor into this for a fully enlightened person. So,
would you repeat, please?
oh, the six sense spheres, the six sense doors,
Yeah,
six sense spaces, how they factor into all this, play into all this.
yeah, that's right. Because enlightened ones, what time is it now? It's 9:45, right? Let's take a break for 15 minutes, and then I'll answer Josh's question.
Right.
Okay. So let me answer the question that Josh asked. Josh, would you rephrase the question again, please? Sorry about that.
Sorry, it looks like he left the room and is now rejoining.
Okay. But that's also a very critical question that he has. That would add to the answer on karma and the karma of enlightened people. So now, should I wait for him or should I answer the question?
I allowed him in the room, so he should be. That is, if that's his phone number. Sorry.
I'm here. I was just turned off mute. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Josh. Yes. Would you rephrase the question again, please?
Okay. It's from what I understand, or I was just wondering about. We were talking about karma and how it is or isn't present. During or after enlightenment, and how the mind is freed, but the body's still subject to karma. But what is the interplay between the ayatanas, the six ayatanas, the six sense spheres, the six sense doors, the six sense spaces, and the interplay of that and how that happens? So
okay. Thank you. The interplay between.
You're welcome.
Interplay is that enlightened people, right? And they don't make new karma, because their perception, they continue to remain, they perceive the world, but their perception based on, that is always, as you say, as we know, it's based on the six sense spheres. So that eyes with images, sound, ears with sounds, nose with smell, tongue with taste, and skin with anything tangible, and mind with the data or the information that it received from the first five sense spheres, sense faculties. Whereas when enlightened people perceive the world, they continue to experience the world, but their experience do not produce new karma. Because why? Because they don't have attachment to karma. They don't have attachment. They don't have any desire to do that. See, so that and then it is the same. It is the same mode. They have their mind in non-attachment mode, right? See, when enlightened people, they don't come back to life. They don't come back to samsara, because it's not because of their mind is totally absent of karma. Karma is lingering. Karma is still there. According to, as we mentioned in the previous answer, that it's because they don't have any desire. They have no attachment, no trishna, tanha, to continue to come back. in the case of their worldly experience also, so that they continue to experience, they continue to see the world based on their 5, 6 sense spheres, 6 faculties. But because their experience is absent of attachment, because their experience is absent of expectations, that doesn't produce any new karma. Like Buddha is thirsty, and when I am thirsty, so that yeah.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah. So that's the interplay. Any other questions? I think Juan. I see that I think Juan had a question as well. See, Lee, just any other questions about that? Karma and nirvana? I think this is the heart of the discussion today. Thanks to the question that Toshita asked, and then so that George and Huang, so that yeah, I think that we could get that clarified. I mean, but it wouldn't be a perfect answer, as Toshita mentioned, because I myself had the same problem years ago, and I would talk to people for hours and hours and hours to know. So that again, just think in terms of these 2 words, sopadisesa, sa upadi. Nirvana in the physical body and nirvana without the physical body. But it is the same nirvana, but it's not 2 different types of nirvana. It's the same nirvana, but because of centuries later, because this debate arose as to why enlightened people go through karma, and they came up with this definition. It's not a canonical definition. It is a sub-canonical definition that nirvana in the physical body, within the physical body, while living in the physical body, and nirvana after death. And you also come across this phrase in the canon, parinipputo so bhagava parinippanaya dhammam deseti. You come across a long phrase about the purpose of Buddha. And I'm just saying in Pali, you don't have to write it down. Buddha so bhagava bodhaya dhamman deseti. Buddha, who is now enlightened, teaches his dharma for others to get enlightened just like he did. And then danto so bhagava dhammataya dhamman deseti. Buddha, who has perfect control over his senses, and then teaches his dharma for others so that others can be like him. Santoso bhagava samataya dhamman deseti. Buddha, who has pacified his mind, Buddha who and then teaches his dharma for others so that others can achieve that pacified mind. And then tinno so bhagava taranaya dhamman deseti. Buddha teaches. If you want, I can later, I will post that statement both in Pali and English on Slack. So, tinno so bhagava taranaya dhamman deseti. Buddha, who has crossed the samsara over to nirvana side, teaches his dharma to others so that others can cross as well. The last one is the one I just typed in. Parinipputo so bhagava parinippanaya dhammang deseti. Buddha, who totally eradicated, extirpated his, Buddha is totally extinct, who has totally extinguished his kilesas or defilements, teaches his dharma for others so that others can also achieve that total extinction, total extinction of kilesas, or how to say, defilements. At that point, it doesn't say karma, but the kilesas or defilements. Kilesas or defilements. Parinibbuta, the word is very important here. Parinibbuta. Parinibbuta is the past participle of parinibbana, of the noun, says parinibbayati. So that, so now pari, and you are familiar with the term parinirvana in Sanskrit. Pari plus nirvana. Now, look at the etymology. Pari means complete. Total. Nibbana. Extinction of what? Of defilements. So, and Nibbana literally means also Nibbana. See, that's is nir plus, as you know, nir plus vana. As long as there is vana or craving, and then it's like worldly beings live on fire. And then, so the vana or cravings are always identified with the fire, like burning fire. That's why Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh calls it that as long as we are not enlightened, we are like sitting on burning charcoal. He's using a Western analogy. Burning charcoal. The Buddhist canon, it says that you are sitting on burning fire. That it is your own defilements, it is your own expectations that returns, that gives you anxiety, depression, insecurity, so that you remain restless. So that is called the inner burning. And so that, whereas when there is no craving, that's what nirvana means. When you become pacified, you have totally extinguished, totally put up the inner fire. Now that's how, so that at nirvana you totally put up your fire, you totally extinguish the fire of defilements, the fire of cravings. And so that is the meaning of nirvana. Actually, this is the meaning of nirvana. But in conventionally, and people would say, okay, on the Vesak day, Buddha passed into nirvana, because some people, but actually it has to mean, when you say philosophically, it is philosophically incorrect to say that Buddha passed into nirvana. Actually, you have to say he passed into pari-nirvana. So when I was young, so I had to correct myself too, because when I wrote in one of my essays that on the Vesak day Buddha passed into nirvana, and then my teacher told me it's not nirvana that he passed into. He passed into parinirvana. Pari at this point, as I said, total. Here, total implies remaining. Remaining burdens. What is the remaining burden? It's the physical body. Physical, to an enlightened person, the physical body is the how to say the remnants of fire, or the remaining inner fire, because of that karma, and then so that his physical body is subject to past karma. And pari, philosophically, pari means total. Total means nirvana is there, but we are not talking about nirvana that an enlightened person go to upon death, but simply it's the leaving behind, or the getting rid of the last remaining burden. That is the physical body. So it is philosophically incorrect to say Buddha went to nirvana at age 80. Actually, there's no going anyway. It's philosophically correct. Buddha achieved nirvana at age 35, and at age 80, he left the last. He got rid of the last remaining burden of samsara. That is the physical body. So, any questions? Any more questions? See the difference between nirvana and parinirvana. It's two different things. Parinirvana again, or parinibbana in Pali, or parinirvana in Sanskrit mean getting rid of the last remaining piece of burden, last remaining burden. That is the physical body. Because of that, those scholars, I mean, whosoever composed those sub-canonical texts or the commentaries, happen to come up with two types of nirvana. Sa upadi, nirvana within the physical body, and nirvana without the physical body. To me, that definition is really confusing. So that's why, whereas how I got a more clear idea was in terms of nirvana and parinirvana. Because pari includes nirvana within. Pari plus nirvana. Nirvana is the total emancipation from defilements. But still, and then there is something remaining. And the prefix pari, meaning complete or total, implies that remaining burden, which is nothing but is none other than the physical body.
Ante,
Yes.
this is Huang again. Is it too simplist, too simple? Is it too simple to say that the Buddha attained the enlightenment at the time that he sit in the Bodhi tree and he entered to Parinirvana at the Kusanara?
Exactly. That's what phrase means. Remember, I mentioned that, okay, I would say, parinibbuto so bhagava, parinibbanaya dhamman deseti. That is the, how to say, philosophically thought-provoking statement. The philosophically thought-provoking part of his statement when it comes to the purpose of Buddha. Parinibbuto so bhagava, one who has totally eradicated his defilements, parinibbanaya dhamman deseti. Now, in order for him to continue to teach, he must be a living personality. Thank you for asking that question. So that at that point, parinirvana is not simply the leaving the burden also. I think I'm not confusing you. Now, parinibbuto, so one who is totally pacified, teaches his dharma to others so they can pacify themselves as well. Yes, under the Bodhi tree, he totally became pacified, meaning parinibbana. But again, because of the karma, because of the fact that his body would still be subject to some karma, and then the latter-day scholars, they simply marked a point of departure from the canonical explanation of parinirvana as being the total nirvana. And then, because otherwise it would be confusing, if it is total nirvana, why then his body is subject to karma? And then what they did was, what in the commentarial age, they redefined the term parinirvana as being, parinirvana being the leaving, getting rid of the last piece of burden, which is the physical body. But actually, according to earliest canonical description, in order for us to achieve parinirvana, complete pacification, and then he teaches us the Dharma. So it is simple to say that. So at this point, you know that parinirvana is being used in two terms then again. And then his death, it implies that his death, at the same time, it implies his enlightenment. But because of the other doctrinal factor, that his body is subject to past karma, and then latter day scholars, they just made a point of departure from the canonical term nirvana being the total pacification of defilement, and then they redefine parinirvana as being leaving the last piece of burden. But actually, personally, I would like to say, now, this is my personal idea, because don't take it as an academic idea. Now, personally, I try my best to understand Buddhism within the canon itself. I hardly refer to Buddhist commentaries, because Buddhist commentaries contain so many confusing ideas also. But at the same time, commentaries are helpful. They would help us to get certain things clarified that are not discussed, not mentioned, not discussed in the canon at length. So, did I make that clear enough? If not, you can ask me maybe again another question pertaining to that description. All right. Okay. Now, and then next question is number 3. Rebirth in Buddhism is way different than reincarnation in Hinduism. Clarify the statement. Before that, see the interconnection between the teaching of rebirth and nirvana. Maybe I just mentioned in one of our previous sessions, that some people didn't like me to say that unless there is samsara, there's no nirvana. Now, nirvana, to me, is an independent reflection of samsara, not a dependent reflection of samsara. When you totally transform your samsara, when you totally, penetrate samsara as being a relative reality, as being a conditioned reality, and so that you stop believing that samsara has a permanent substance, permanent essence, so that as you continue to the process, as you continue to walk your path to nirvana, it is the gradual reduction of desires, so that progress of the path to nirvana essentially means the gradual reduction of desires, vanas or cravings, so that ultimately you will hit a point along your cognitive process, that you don't have that you have zero expectations, zero desires. You don't expect anything. Even when you are hungry or thirsty, and then you would get your arms ball and get in the street and go on arms round. You may or may not receive food from the people, and you may happen to starve, but starvation is not your concern at all. In the eyes of the ordinary people, in case an enlightened person happened to die of starvation, in the eyes of the ordinary people, it is a disaster. It is a spiritual disaster. But in the eyes of the very person going through that, it is not a disaster at all. Why? He has no concern with starvation. And then so that so an enlightened person would have a different approach to his starvation, simply because he didn't get any food to eat. He didn't get anything to drink. And then so that if they have a purpose left, that is to help others. Now, that is the only purpose. Now, this is called the selfless purpose. Now, we have a selfish purpose. I do have a selfish purpose, always. I could be at times selfless when I help others as a monk. But overall, how to say, fundamentally, so that my purpose is self-based. I want to make myself happy. I want to call it my happiness. Remember, at that point, you can use that pair of words, subjective, and objective approaches. Subjective and objective. Where did you get these pair of terms? From the Satipatthana Sutta. Satipatthana, the discourse on the 4 foundations of. Sorry, I'm a very how to say, slow writer type. The 4 foundations of mindfulness. I think you learned how to say a profound. You had a profound session on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, Venerable Master Jiru, and he told that it is from his lesson that you learn the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But anyway, so the foundations of mindfulness is all about the fact that we try our best to not to use the subjective approach to our existence, but to use the objective approach to existence. And then so that the subjective approach is such that I have a desire, or I have a need, and I need to fulfill it. Now, that is a statement of subjective approach. And what is then the opposite? The opposite of it, statement of objective approach. There is a desire, or there is a need, and there is a need, and then based on whether you are enlightened or unenlightened, you decide whether to achieve that need or completely disregard that need. Because to enlightened people, they don't use the term need. And then so that it's not a need. And so that they have a selfless purpose. They have a selfless purpose of food, selfless purpose of water, drink, selfless purpose of remaining in the world after its enlightenment. It is simply to guide others through. And they can pass, they are ready to face their death anytime. but it's not our case. In our case, it's different. Always our approach is subjective. We hardly say there is a need. We always say, I have a need. When you start with I, that is subjective. If you say, when there is a need, still being subjective, still being unenlightened subjective beings, subjective ones, we can make a conscious effort to revisit our needs from by using the second approach, that is the objective approach. That is the purpose that Satipatthana Sutta, or the discourse on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, serves. And then remember one term that we have been using. So the Buddha's deconstructive approach. So the deconstructive approach is the same as objective approach. Remember, instead of talking about a selfhood or a complete or the uniformed selfhood, and every time throughout his teachings, and Buddha would simply deconstruct or reduce selfhood into different areas, into different components. And instead of talking about the overall selfhood as a uniform identity, uniform entity, he would first deconstruct our selfhood, individuality, persona into different components of or areas. Then he would describe individual areas or components of our selfhood. That is what he has done in the description of the 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates, when you put the 5 aggregates back in where they are, again you reconceptualize, you come up with what is called selfhood. But what Buddha does, always he has done is, he would deconstruct, he would use the deconstructive approach, he would use the objective approach, and then he would, just to get the message across, the message that there is no selfhood with a permanent substance or permanent essence. There is an essence on the conventional level. So that's why Buddha doesn't reject that he has feelings. He doesn't reject that he doesn't reject the idea that he gets hungry. He doesn't reject the idea that he gets thirsty. But at the same time, his approach to hunger and thirst is way different than our approach to hunger and thirst. Because whether or not he get to eat something, whether or not he get to satisfy his thirst, quench his thirst, becomes no concern to him. Whereas in my case, in the case of ordinary people, and then so that failure to get food or water, drink, can end up in murder, by murdering someone, killing someone, because we get depressed due to hunger and due to our sensory needs, because we need that. Because it is no concern, but in that, enlightened people like the Buddha has zero concern. They don't have any concern there. So that's why Buddha, every time he used just this subjective, objective approach. So then how to apply that? Now we were talking about the 4 noble, noble eightfold path, and we will come across that. The purpose of noble eightfold path is that we start with the right view, the first one, right view, as opposed to wrong view. Then what is the right view? The right view is, in a deep philosophical sense, right view is the view that comes from your consciously applied, consciously, purposely used objective approach to existence. Because subjective approach, as you know, is natural, built-in. That's how we define that in our previous sessions. Subjective approach is natural, built-in, whereas objective approach is adopted, enhanced, and consciously and purposely used. Now, that's the purpose of meditation too in Satipatthana, 4 foundations of mindfulness. In 4 foundations of mindfulness, there are 4 foundations. Now, what is this foundation? Patthana. So that Patthana literally means frame. So that contextually, it is foundation or basis. Now, you deconstruct the selfhood, your persona, you don't use that. And sometimes some practitioners, some Buddhists, some people are scared to look at themselves as something non-existent. Actually, you do that. If I use an academic term, that deconstruction is not anatomical. It is theoretical. Now, but one of the monks from Sri Lanka, his name is Madhavala Punnaji, who passed away a couple of years ago. He was a scientist, he was a medical doctor. He calls meditation on the 4 foundations of mindfulness anatomical meditation. He calls it the spiritual anatomy of selfhood. Now, anatomy is, the reduction or the deconstruction of anything into pieces so that you can have a more clear idea. Likewise, in the Satipatthana Sutta in the discourse of 4 foundations of mindfulness, and then you have this anatomical approach. But even though I don't personally use the term anatomical, because given its wide use in medicine and in science, but he being a medical, that monk, Venerable Dr. Punnaji, who passed away a couple of years ago, being a medical expert himself, probably he had tried to come up with a medical description of the deconstructive approach to selfhood that Buddha has used. Maybe that's why he has used the term anatomical. He explains that too. By anatomical, I don't mean a scientific, whatever the purpose it is used in science and medicine, but simply the philosophical, theoretical use of the term, just like the Buddha has done, so that people would have a layman's idea, would have a clearer idea of what this deconstructive or the objective approach is. So now that is what Venerable Punnaji has done. Anyway, in his terms, it is anatomical meditation. It's anatomical, but this is called the deconstructive. Again, deconstruction is highly used in philosophy. So that's why when it comes to Buddhist philosophy, it is okay, and its scholars use the term deconstructive in Buddhist philosophy as well. Now you see that here different now. Now always religion has two levels, popular level and the philosophical level. Now, if we try to apply the deconstructive approach on the popular level of Buddhism, people wouldn't get that. But of course, this is part of our philosophical imagination or meditation, because Buddha both approves and rejects logics. Now, logically, by means of logics, you can prove that a mango tree is an apple tree, or vice versa. In logics, you can argue, right, logically. While both are trees, both are fruits, both trees produce fruit. So the apple is a fruit, so is mangoes. Apples are fruits, so are mangoes. and then so that what produce what apples or mangoes is a tree. So logically, both trees, apple and mango, are trees. Both are fruit, and so that because both trees are trees, same, and that's the origin of fruit. And then even though it's a mango and apple, simply because they are both fruit, and so you can prove logically that mango and apple are same. But that's so that's why Buddha approved logical, how to say, the application of logics to a certain extent. So that is the rational part of our approach. And then beyond a certain point, we need to use not the rational or the logical part of the approach. And it also had the logical part of the approach is the rational part of the approach. But again, rational part of the approach is not purely logical. It also includes the philosophical, how to say, and that's when he comes up with the how to say. That's why he looked at the 5 aggregates as not as individuality or selfhood or persona, but instead as 5 components of selfhood, the 5 aggregates. And then is the and then now there should be a way to practice that. That is why the Satipatthana Sutta is the first and foremost meditation, how to say, scripture of meditation in the Buddhist canon, especially in the Pali canon. So the most important scripture, most important text, how to say, a meditation text, because it gives you a meditative approach. Because use of meditation is a must in Buddhist practice. And you come across these 3 essentials of meditation. In popular Buddhism, and of course, you talk about 3 essentials of practice. That is dana, charity, and then sila, moral principles. And then actually you came back, refer to Venerable Rahula's terminology, the 3 essentials of Buddhist practice, how he explained that. And then third one is bhavana, meditation. Now, you might have seen two kinds of meditators, especially just going way out. I would like to say, so how to say, Dr. Henepola. Once again, I would like to say today's discussion was not purely academic. And also I would like to say the Kelaniya University has organized, formulated this coursework, not as a dry, pure academic coursework, but just to give you some idea of Buddha's teachings. So this teaching style is an intermediate level between pure academic. This is an intermediate structure, an intermediate way between pure dry academic structure and the sermon. Now, this is neither a sermon nor a dry philosophical lecture here, and because this is application, because the whole purpose of this coursework is application. So that's why we are just using, because one day when you walk away from the classroom, we should have equipped ourselves with some clear-cut understanding, if it's not clear-cut, some obvious, some satisfactory level of understanding of the Buddha's teaching. That's why I'm using this way of this called free fall application, free fall description, of free fall teaching of the fundamental teachings, because there's stuff about space in abundance for you to ask any question. So anyway, I was going to say now Venerable Dr. Henepola Gunaratana, and he is the one who introduced mindfulness meditation to America. And he has written quite a number of books, Mindfulness in Plain English, Beyond Mindfulness, and then so jhana in jhana or psychic absorptions in Theravada Buddhism. That is his doctoral thesis at the American University. So that now he says, when it comes to popular Buddhism, there are two kinds of Buddhisms in the plural. And he said that dana Buddhism and Bhavana Buddhism. Dana Buddhism and Bhavana Buddhism. By the way, these things are extra things that we do because this is for the purpose of clear understanding. But by the way, once again, I would like to kind of remind, when you walk away from the this meeting room today, and please start at answering the sample questions. Why? Because close to mock exams and actual final exams, you don't have to pressurize yourself, and refer to Venerable Rahula's book, and also gather some more information, academic, some more ideas, and then write the answer just like an formulate answer, just like a open book exam. You know, you are all academics and you have been through the American system of education and all that. You know that in an open book exam, you are free to use different references. You can put reference. And then, whereas when it comes to how to say classroom, how to say traditional, I mean, when you are not using open book, non-open book exam writing, and then you can memorize all the references. But according to, simply remember that according to Walpola Rahula, or according to Hene Pola Gunaratana, according to so and so, this also means this. And please use the term according to, because there's no way to, you are not required to put references. Kalaniya and I would simply know, would convince ourselves, okay, and the students has read a lot of things. That's why he says, according to Oldenburg, according to Rhys Davids, according to Stevenson, according to Rahul, according to Gunaratana. This also means that, so that bring as many perspectives as possible into your answer, and also incorporate your own personal, how to say, observation of the question, and so that would complete, that would give you, that would return, how to say, an applied answer. That being said, now he says Dana Buddhism. Dana is charity Buddhism, meaning people love to offer food, they do charity, they help others, and then and so that is more popular. Now, meditation based on bhavana or meditation is not as popular as the type of Buddhism in which you perform charity. Now, meditation is a must too, because you might have come across that in traditional Buddhist countries, people are more interested in charity, that is dana, rather than in meditation or bhavana. And people do meditate too, but according to Rahula's explanation of Buddhist practice, there are three essentials of Buddhist practice: charity, dana, and then so the morality, moral progress, and bhavana, meditation. Now, meditation is seen as a must in our effort to achieve nirvana. So that is why Buddha puts lots of emphasis on the satipatthana, or the four foundations of mindfulness, and so that you can logically deconstruct your existence. You can logically and philosophically deconstruct your selfhood. But as long as you continue to use the same full-scale subjective approach to existence, and even nirvana would remain something subject to you. and then to the extent that you would say that you go to the extent that you say, well, my nirvana. And people say that word a lot. And then your conventional statement of nirvana is, I want to achieve nirvana one day. But it is correct, based on the conventional truth, it is correct to say, I want to achieve nirvana. That statement is necessarily subjective. Why? And then so that it is logical, and it is it is acceptable to say that. Why? Samsara is yours. It is your simply because it is your samsara, it has to be your nirvana. But again, in terms of approach, and then we have to apply. We need to purposely, consciously try to use the objective approach so that you can at least have a vague idea of yourself being something relative, not really existence. For example, you can understand better. Now, probably it happens to people that they talk about their personal history, of which they say, well, there was a time that I didn't know what suffering is. I didn't know what scarcity is. I didn't know what disappointment is. My life was all good. I thought that there was nothing called suffering. Now that is what Suddhodana. That is what Suddhodana, Siddhartha's father, tried to inflict. So to say, inflict into Siddhartha's mind. Right? That you know that his palace gates were heavily guarded, and Siddhartha never wanted. Suddhodana, Siddhartha's father, king, never wanted Siddhartha to go out, and then so that he built 3 palaces: his summer palace, and then so that fall, autumn palace, and then winter palace. 3 palaces, and then he would be shifted to different palaces, and then by the king, by the father, because of a certain prediction that Suddhodana's own guru made. And you know the story, when Asita Kaladevala, Suddhodana's guru, paid a visit, having heard that his student got a son now. And remember that, so then Asita first smiled, first he laughed out of joy, and then he cried, and then that's when, and then he lamented, and that's when Suddhodana, who was now confused, asked Asita why he first laughed and then why he cried then. And that's when he said that by the time your son would be he can be the Buddha one day. And by the time he becomes the Buddha, I wouldn't be here. I would be in the Brahma world of the formless. I would be in the formless life form. So I will be in a different higher Brahma world without physical body. So I am unable to come back. But that's not the point here. Now Siddhartha, Asita's answer to Suddhodana was scary. That's why he made every possible arrangement to block Siddhartha from seeing realities of samsaric life. But again, based on his paramitas, because he was in his final birth as the Bodhisattva, and he was supposed to be the Buddha. Right? Remember, that's when when he managed to go out with his charioteer, right? So that then what happens is he saw a sick man, an old man, a sick man, and a monk, and then a dead body. A dead body and a monk. And we all get sick, we all get old, we all get sick, and we die, and there must be a way out. And that's the vision of the monk that he had. Now, according to the popular biography of Siddhartha, Siddhartha was, how to say, shocked to see that. But actually, because he was shocked, because he had never seen that before. But later on, he would rekindle his memories as a bodhisattva, and he would understand that. So that's when, so that is the way, that is the subjective approach that we have. But that story also tells something very big, something profound, that when we look at our existence, we all go through the same universal process of aging, sickness, death. These are the three main things. But there should be a way out. And that the last one, the vision of a monk, meaning spirituality. So the first three scenes, the first three scenarios represent samsara. The last scenario that he saw, that he encountered, represents nirvana. So that's the philosophical explanation of the four sites, four things that Siddhartha encountered. There's called the four scenes of empirical existence. Those are the things. Now, going back to this meditative approach. Meditative approach is a must. But in popular, as I said, in popular level, as Dr. Gunaratana says, so that the people, in popular people are more concerned with sila, and so the charity and sila. Charity is dana and morality, or observance of precepts. But actually, even if you observe moral precepts, even if you perform charity, as long as you don't meditate, and you wouldn't be able to cleanse, you wouldn't be able to really address your inner nature, your inner mind. So, any questions?
Bhante, yes, this is Charan.
Okay. Okay, how are you? Okay.
Good, thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So you just mentioned a few minutes back, people sometimes express, I want to achieve nirvana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to put emphasis on I, whatever the rest that I said.
So achievement or seeking is still a desire, and we are seeking something.
Mm.
And obviously I get the opportunity to practice with various other guides as well.
Mm.
The Zen practitioner obviously mentions right away, you're not seeking anything.
Yes, that's right.
The Bodhisattva is primarily, you follow the principles of dana, sila, and bhavana.
Yes.
But you're not seeking anything.
That's right. That is the philosophical description.
Right.
Whereas when it comes to conventional description, ordinary people have difficulty understanding that. So that is why in conventional language we call desire for nirvana is simply the desire to end all desires. So that desire for nirvana is no desire.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. That makes sense, because till that desire persists, we are still, the concept of shunyata obviously
exactly
is taking us away from that last desire as well.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah. So that, so then because we use the conventional, because you don't seek anything.
You don't seek.
Don't seek any. That's why when I came across this, somebody, one of my American Buddhist friends sent me this e-Vesak card, e-Vesak greeting. And that when I opened it, I saw that there's popular Buddhist humor in that. And so that a monk just got his Vesak greeting, he got his Vesak card, you know, that you get the greeting card. And it says, not thinking about you.
Very good.
Yeah, not thinking about you. See, so that if the friend monk said thinking about you, and it wouldn't be a Buddhist Vesak greeting card.
That is.
Yeah, so the not thinking about you. but he still got the card. But at the same time, he's not thinking about you, even though he's thinking about you. So see always this fine line between philosophical language and the conventional language. Yes, you don't seek anything. But sometimes that's why on popular level, some people get frustrated. Of course, lots of people have told me that how frustrated they are when I said that you don't get anything at nirvana. And that actually there is no going to nirvana. And then also the nirvana is nothing but an independent, unrelated reflection of samsara. It's not a related reflection of samsara. But because when you get to drink a cup of coffee, and then always coffee reflects your desire. As you take the first sip, and then you wouldn't like it, your expression would be that you don't like the coffee. It's not as good as the coffee that you have had so far in your life, or it could be way better than the coffee, the different coffee that you have tried, or maybe this is the best, or maybe this is the nastiest, maybe the worst. So that is why whenever you experience something and that reflects something else again, and that brings you frustration or joy. Whereas when you achieve nirvana, it is way different than, completely different than the kind of related reflection that you experience, brings you back. That's why when you read this Theragatha and Theri Gatha, the expressions of enlightened monks and nuns, that is part of the Khuddaka Nikaya of the Pali Canon, Theragatha, and then expressions of enlightenment of monks, bhikkhus, and nuns, bhikkhunis. And then simply when you say that, when you carefully go through their expressions, what those expressions say is that, when they refer to their past, their personal history prior to enlightenment. And then in one of the stories, and one nun, enlightened nun, is saying, I was one who was tortured by my husband. I was one who was too busy taking care of my children. I was one making a livelihood. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to feed my children because my husband was careless. Right? Always they use the past tense, and then they just refer to history. And then they can say, instead of saying how happy they are, their whole point of reference is their past history. Because past history represents their samsara. And then they don't say, and then, well, in the case of the one from among hundreds of expressions of enlightened monks and nuns from those canonical texts, I'm just referring to that particular nun's expressions. And then nowhere in her expressions, nowhere in the expressions of other monks and nuns do you come across how to say final statement and saying, I am happy that I achieved nirvana. They never say that. What they say is, they simply refer to their past. They don't refer to what, they don't talk about whether that they have achieved something. As Sharan asked, yeah. So, and that's how, see their language. That's the language that he used, selfless. Whereas, as long as, now to me, nirvana is something that I imagine. Imagine achieving, getting something. See, I did mention achieving. It's no achievement. It's no acquisition. I don't acquire anything. I don't achieve anything. I don't get anything out of nirvana, but simply I give up everything. And that's why those expressions of enlightened monks are so beautiful, because their expressions are objective. They are using the objective approach, not the subjective approach. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The way I have heard and supplemented and comprehended is if you begin with with your practice, that you already have what you need, and now it's primarily discarding what is non-essential.
Yeah, right.
And the practice continues at that time, and we'll see where it leads to.
Yeah,
because I think when you started off the conversation in the lecture about the interdependent origination, even to have that last remnant thought of I'm seeking nirvana creates that interdependent origination of our
exactly.
activity, thoughts, conduct, behaviors. So I think again, all of you are the guides and the insightful. That's how I comprehend it. That if you start the practice, you already have what you need, and following the shunyata aspect of discarding what is non-essential, that's where that practice means.
That's great. That's a great explanation. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Sharan, elaborating on that. Actually, you can add that to our description. Now, essential, so that on the worldly level also, Buddha recommends that on the conventional worldly level, if you really want to, how to say, if again I'm using the subjective language, there's no other way to explain that. So that's why that is one of the doctoral theses from the University of Hawaii, nirvana, and I think I mentioned that in how to say, one of the masterpieces on ineffability of nirvana. So effable means you are able to verbalize, describe by means of wordings, whereas ineffable means you are not in a position to explain nirvana by means of language. So that the ineffability of nirvana means nirvana cannot be really expressed. Why? Because it's not subjective. But whereas, as you said, and as we all think as conventional beings, because we even have a subjective approach nirvana, as you said, Shiran. So nirvana, to an ordinary person, even nirvana is interdependent. Yes, it is interdependent, which is not correct, but that's how we look at that, because nirvana is interdependent means it's a related reflection of samsara. But again, based on the Theragathas and Therigathas and based on the Buddha's own personal expressions, their samsara is unrelated to their nirvana. But at the same time, without samsara, there shouldn't have been that nirvana achieved. So that meaning, so that you don't, you have a purpose. That purpose could be called the desire, but that desire, if you use the term desire, that is the desire to end all the desires.
Thank you, Bhante. I don't want to take too much of your time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. And then next one is, let's say the Punapava. Now see the interrelation between how to say interdependent origination and nirvana so far. See, so that's why today's class is going to be like a whole book, written on the same theme like that. So that's why I just want to have this session as like a free fall, like that free fall style, whatever that in the Western world use that, because then when you formulate your answers, you should not get stuck with certain philosophical ideas. Why then? Because when you understand facts and you can, there's the free flow of your answer, you will be able to formulate the answer easily. So that's why I thought I should have this session like this and this style today. And say to look at number 3, Punabhava. Maybe you are familiar with that word, Punabhava. That is so Puna plus Bhava, the Pali word. Sanskrit word is Punar Bhava. Puna or Punar means again. Punar is again. Bhava, to become. To become again. To become again and again. So that's the Buddhist Pali term for rebirth. But again, see the philosophical difference. That's the word I have to use. The philosophical difference between, I must use the politically correct language. The philosophical difference between reincarnation in Hinduism and Punarva. And in Sanskrit, Punarava. We also use this Punaravatar. That means Punar avatar. It's from the Sanskrit word avatar, that you got your Facebook avatar, right? Avatar comes from the Sanskrit. Now the English word avatar comes from the Sanskrit avatar. Avatar, it becomes in Pali and Sanskrit is avatar. Avatarati in Sanskrit. Otarati in Pali, the same word avatarati. Otarati means it means you get back in. That's the literal meaning. Get back in, enter, restart, restart. That's what avatar or. Now, one of the fascinating, how to say, Hindu teachings is that when you talk about Dasa avatars of Vishnu, right? Buddha avatar. Now, Buddha is an avatar of Vishnu. When I studied the relevant Sanskrit text as a novice monk in Sri Lanka, I would go through the verses. The explanation was in verse, in avatar. And then when it comes to the Sanskrit Pali definition of avatar, it means it is the same person who comes back. Let me repeat. It is the same person who comes back. Same. Quote, same, unquote. It is the same person, quote, unquote, that comes back. So, and then, now that is the pre-Buddhist idea of our samsara. Now you come back, and that again the subjective. who comes back? It is the same person who comes back. Whereas Buddha used a word, he used a different word. But again, Huna, let me type that again. Huna plus Bhava. When you use the word Punapava, Puna, there's no individual involved there. And Buddha simply talks about consciousness. Consciousness, something that travels between two bodies. And then, so that in text you come across this one too. Na, cha, so, na, cha. So I can put diacritics on my computer. It's broken and it's too old. Nya means, you know, that diacritic mark tilde on na, that's pronounced as nya, like in mañana, right? Viññāna, pañña. So nacha so, meaning it is not the same one, nor is it a different one. Now, that's the Buddhist explanation of rebirth. It's not the same one, nor is it a different one. Because some energy, something from this lifetime of that person, this life form goes into the whatever the next life form that he's going to get. But it is not you drop your, of course, you drop the genetic part of your selfhood body, so it's going to be a different part. But you still carry your karma, your memories and habits forward, as stored in what is called your consciousness. Subliminal. You learn two terms: subliminal consciousness, or Bhavanga consciousness in Pali Buddhism, and then so that Alaya Viññāna, or storehouse consciousness in Sanskrit Buddhism. In academia, we hardly use the term Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. We use the canonical identity of different Buddhist schools. Now, basically, there are two linguistic identities. Linguistically, there are two schools of Buddhism: Pali Buddhism and Sanskrit Buddhism. And then, academically speaking, now you would say, now Theravada Buddhism is Pali Buddhism. Not necessarily so. Theravada Buddhism is based on the Pali canon. Mahayana Buddhism is based on the early Sanskrit text, which were then translated into Chinese and Tibetan. And some of the texts still remain in Sanskrit. Now, the linguistic identity, I always go by the linguistic identity of different Buddhist schools. The Pali, that's why we call it, in academia, you call it Pali Buddhism and Sanskrit Buddhism, or Sanskrit Buddhism / Chinese Tibetan Buddhism. Because the most primary linguistic identity of Mahayana text is Sanskrit. Later, they were translated into Chinese, and they were retranslated back into Sanskrit. And not the Vajrayana Buddhism or the Lama Buddhism that people in Tibet, Sikkim, and Mongolia adhere to. That's called the Vajrayana or the Diamond Buddhism, which is still part of. It has so that the identity of Tibetan Buddhism is semi-Indian, semi-Chinese, because geographically Tibet is located between China and India. So that's culturally, it is semi-Chinese, semi-Indian, semi-Chinese. So the doctrinally also they use the same teachings, but linguistically we come up with these two words. I don't know the Tibetan, maybe one of you know the Tibetan word for Ale Viññāna, storehouse consciousness. Anyway, in Pali, it is the Bhavanga consciousness. That is mental continuum. That is the continuum of our our consciousness. It's like the pen drive. It's like the flash drive that you save data, and so you can carry it anywhere. It was a small pen drive, small flash drive, and then you hook it up to the samsaric computer, and you can open up the files and you can run them again. Right? So that's what I always like, that computing analogy, the pen drive analogy. Right? So that's what we carry. But at the same time, because we carry something from this life to whichever the life form that we get after life, upon death, it is the same person. It is the same one. Same one means not the complete one, not the complete full-scale selfhood that we carry from this lifetime. We drop a lot of things. The first thing that we drop is our physical body, and then we drop our cultural identity. We drop our social identity, and then so that finally we even drop most of our emotional identity. So there are different facets or areas of our personal identity. And then it is simply some data that we carry forward, simply because we carry our memories and our karma and our habits together in our storehouse consciousness, if I will Sanskrit Mahayana terms, or if I will in our Bhavanga consciousness, in our Bhavanga, if I use the Pali / Theravada terms. But again, I would like to say academically, so that Theravada Buddhism is based on the Pali canon, so that at times you call Theravada Buddhism is Pali Buddhism, but actually not necessarily so. When it comes to Theravada Buddhism, it has gone through so much cultural assimilation and cultural transformation in different countries. Thai Buddhism is way different than Buddhism in Sri Lanka, for example. And then of Mahayana Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism is way different than Korean Buddhism in Taiwan, or in Malaysia it's different because of the cultural addition, cultural assimilation and transformation of religion. It happens to any religion. So, and then we take something from this life. Say I'm using the subjective language. We take something. I take something. Sorry about the subjective language. There's no other way to use that. It's okay. This is conventional life. Coursework is conventional. And then we have difficult use in the philosophical language. Philosophical language, there's only one way that you can use the philosophical language or the language of objective approach. That is in your philosophical imagination, not the conventional imagination, and in your meditation. So, nacha anyo, nor is it the different one. It is not the same person. Why? The same person doesn't come back. But nor is a different one means because the one who comes back to samsara is not independent, is not totally independent of the one who was before. But at the same, it's not the same one, nor is it the different one. It's not the same one because it's a different personality. But at the same time, it's not a totally different one because his life, his recreation, his reformation, his comeback is based on the karma, memories, and whatever that you learn in the description of the reproductive karma, Janaka karma, in our discussion on our karma. I remember that. Janaka karma, that is reproduct. So the reproductive karma, how karma leads to our comeback, triggers our comeback at the last thought moment. So it is not the same one. So that's why in order to philosophically differentiate his teaching from the already established notion of samsara or reincarnation, Buddha used a different language. Of course, Buddha used a Prakrit language too. And you notice that too. So that now he used the Prakrit or the language of the common people. Actually, it happens in two, because now, see, ancient Christianity was written in Hebrew. But when Christianity was Romanized, Bible was rewritten in Latin. And now you have the King James Bible, that is very different. It's not a Latin either, it's in English, right? See the Hebrew Bible, from Hebrew Bible to the Latin Bible, and from Latin Bible to the English Bible. So why, whenever you reinforce a teaching or reinforce a belief that is already in place, and then, by the way, Buddha borrowed a lot from Hinduism and pre-existing religions. So that, and then that's why when my teacher, my own guru monk told me, Buddha didn't invented anything anew. What he simply did was, he simply reinforced all the pre-existing teachings in light of, in terms of the three marks of existence. Anicca, dukkha, and anatta. That is where the Buddha's teaching starts, actually. So, and most of other things he borrowed, he redefined, he reinforced certain ideas. Buddha was never against the existing religious beliefs. That actually, personally speaking, that is one thing. That is one thing I was taught by my gurus when I decided to come to America to explain Buddhism. Okay, help people filter doctrine, filter teaching from the culture, and let the people rethink. Give the freedom, let the people, integrate your Buddhist ideas into their all cultural patterns, into their cultural way of thinking. Because otherwise it would be a cultural transplant of Dharma upon the American cultural body. Because I'm talking about American, that's where I live. That's why I'm saying American, or West, or anywhere, the different landscape. Now, that being said, now that's the difference here. Now, that's why he used the term Punappa. He used a different language. Because had he continued to use Sanskrit language, because then he would not have been able to get his message across. Actually, academically speaking, I always put the emphasis on academically speaking, because in academia, in the academia, we don't feel offended. That's the marvel of academia. In academia, you don't feel offended. So that's why I always tell myself, so that my wordings, the way I express myself, is in the academia is very different than when I express myself in the monastery, because that makes a big difference in the American academia too. Now, at times, your thesis, your academic thesis or dissertation is rejected by the religious studies. It happens in religious studies departments, so that your thesis committee can very easily reject your thesis or dissertation by saying that, well, you have not written a dissertation or a thesis. You have written a report, a report by a seminarian. They said academic versus seminarian means just like an academic versus Buddhist monk in Eastern. So that's why it's the language. So that we don't feel offended within the academia when you use these terms. So now that's when this is a different language that Buddha used. So he just wanted to use the Prakrit language. And I was going to say that something happened to some, that when monks, when Buddhist monks, when Sangha split away from the mainstream Sangha, 100 years after the Buddha's death, and so that there was a bigger, so the breakaway group has a bigger number of members, bigger head count. And what happens was later, some of the monks who split from the first group, and then they rejected Pali or the Prakrit language. They rewrote text in Sanskrit. Then what happens overnight was, again, those discourses, and so that when some more centuries later, when decades later, when some people read those texts that were rewritten in Sanskrit, and people couldn't see the difference between non-Buddhist texts and the Buddhist texts. So that's why Buddha knew that. He used a different language. Actually, that is the same technique that was used by Christians, right? From the Hebrew Bible to Latin Bible to the King James English version of the Bible, right? So, and then here, I think I went too far just to say that the term Punabbhava, by the way, this is another sample question, right? So the Punabbhava, and please remember the term Punabbhava, rebirth, even if you don't use the word, if in the exam, maybe in mock exam or the actual exam, probably this is, in case this question appears on your paper, and please remember to use rebirth and reincarnation when you clarify that. It is better if you can remember Punabbhava and Punaravatara, so that, or just one Punaravatara and also the Punaruppatti, but it's more like Sinhalese. Punarupati. That means Puna or Punar, and then Uppatti. Uppatti comes from the Pali Sanskrit and Upapatati. Upapatati means fall back. Upapatati means fall back. You fall back in the same pattern. You fall back in the same pattern of what? Same pattern of existence. And at that point, this term Punaruppatti corresponds to the Buddhist teaching of interdependent origination. Remember you that you learned that for Paticca Samuppada, the Pali word. Paticca. Paticca means you come back. You return. You come back. That's what meant by Punaruppatti as well. And then Uppatti means to fall back. By the way, Uppatti literal. So the conventional meaning Uppatti in layman's language is birth. When you say when is your birth, when is your Uppatti day, meaning your birthday, meaning when did you come back? That's the philosophically. You are philosophically asking someone, when did you come back? When did you fall back? Meaning you are talking about the other person's birthday, meaning Uppatti or Avatara. Avatara is to so the reappear. Reappear as something else. That is Avatara means avatar. And Uppatti also means come back, fall back. Avatar, Punaravatara or Punaruppatti. Punaruppatti is widely used in Sri Lankan Buddhism. So that even Hindus in Sri Lanka, they use the Punaruppatti. Punaruppatti. And then, so that is the difference between Punabbhava and Punabbhava. The time is up. See you at 1:30, right? And about that. Now think about the linguistic approach, the linguistic explanation, the philosophical explanation of the two terms Punabbhava and Punaravatara, or the Punaruppatti. And in case you find, once again, in case you find it difficult to remember the Pali Sanskrit terms, and please do remember the two corresponding terms, rebirth corresponding to Pali Buddhism, and Buddhism and reincarnation corresponding to Hinduism and other religions that predates Buddhism. Thank you, and see you at 1:30.